of that. As always, for those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it if you can. As always, comment down below as well if you want to see something else for us to talk about, or you want to comment on any of the things that we discuss. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please follow and give us a 5-star review if you can. Definitely helps get us in front of more listeners and watchers. All right. But I mean, let's get on to that. It's going to be a very short Arsenal segment this week because, as you said, there isn't very much to talk about. But there really is probably just one thing to talk about, which is the opposite of what I was just saying I wanted to hear during the international break, and that is a couple of new injuries to both Saka and to Martinelli. It's looking like the Saka one is on the better side in terms of him returning quickly. There was a comment coming out from Lee Carsley saying that they would have played him in this game if it wasn't just for the risk, and they didn't want to essentially upset the club, I think, by playing him again so quickly after basically getting him injured already. And then there's also come out that old Gabby Martinelli has also picked up a knock. Haven't really heard yet how serious it is, but it's just another kind of setback for us. I'm not going to go and say that Martinelli is the most important player in our team, but it did look like he was picking up some form again, and we know what he can be and how important he can be for the Arsenal team when he is performing. And then on top of that, we've got Odegaard. It seems to be an update on his injury. I believe it is now coming out that it's looking like he's going to be at least out until November. Not really sure when in November, but it's looking like probably the backside of November. So that obviously puts him out of a couple of important games for us. Obviously, we've got some pretty good, big games coming up in the next probably 4 or 5 game weeks. And it would be lovely to have him for those. But obviously with those 3 injuries, let's be honest, Odegaard, Martinelli and Saka from the offensive side of our team, the attacking side of our team, if you look back a couple of years ago and even last year, they were the most important players in that team from the attacking side of things. Trossard not included and a couple of other players not included, Declan Rice, of course, but they were really our main attacking options, and you'd probably see most of the goals that we scored coming from the 3 of them. So it kind of gets to a point of what do Arsenal need to do? And that's the kind of question I'm going to be asking myself and you, Ant, is, with these 3 injuries, maybe the one to Saka not so bad, and hopefully the one to Martinelli not so bad, it brings a wider point of, do Arsenal need to look to get extra cover? We've obviously had a really good string of luck, I guess you could call it, in terms of not getting injuries to our major players over the last couple of years. And we haven't had to rely on anyone else. But now if we are reminded that these players are not invincible and that they are capable of picking up knocks, whether it's in the international breaks or during the season, it points to a wider question of, do we need to get some extra cover in January? I'm going to get your thoughts on it first before I speak. So what do you think? Do we need to be looking at getting a couple of new players in? Do we need to be using our youth more? What do you think we need to be doing with this kind of stark reminder we've had over the last couple of weeks?
I think there's 2 answers. I think I say this most of the time when you ask my opinion on this stuff. I mean, I think the reality is you probably won't dip in to the transfer market in January. I guess unless Odegaard's injury is extended for a longer period, or you get like a season-ending injury. I think that's probably the only way Arteta or Edu will be able to unlock the purse strings to get an additional player in. I think the Sterling late loan and the decision to get rid of Vieira and Smith Rowe for Waneri and a couple of your other young players is a decision that's been made, and it's with the view for the whole season, I would imagine. So I think if I was you, I would. I don't think Sterling and a young player or a couple of young players, even if they've looked really good, and I've been impressed by Waneri a lot, I still don't think it's enough for what you're trying to achieve. If you're going for top 4, you know what, go for it. I think that was the time when you kind of blooded Saka, Martinelli, Smith Rowe in the first place, was when you guys were kind of in a lull, trying to get back into top 4, fighting for Europe, and good young players can help you achieve that. But I think when you're going for a title and you're going up against Man City, with the added caveat that they haven't got Rodri for the rest of the season, and you probably won't have. I know this. People say this all the time, but I don't mean it in like a in a banter way. But realistically, when are you going to have the opportunity to strike when your biggest rivals lost one of their most influential players for the whole season? You know what I mean? If you think back to, I think some similarities between, I think Roy Keane got did his cruciate. I think the famous the Alfingi Haaland situation, and United were top of the league, and he was out for the whole season. And I'm not saying this is the sole reason, because you guys played amazing that season, but it gave you guys, I'm sure it gave the Arsenal squad who we were fighting with for the title that season great impetus to be like, look, they've lost their general, their midfield, their main man. Let's go for it. I remember also a similar situation when Rio got his drugs ban, when we were top of the league. Again, I think it was with you guys, and then you guys, I think it was in like January or February or whatever, and then you guys stormed past us and won the league again. And at that time, Rio was like our main, kind of centre back before Vidic had properly solidified, and after Stam. And so, if you think about it, you've got that opportunity, or you've got a similar opportunity now. I know it's not quite the same, because Man City are like, they're like Thanos, right? If he loses one hand, he's still going to be a tall mountain to overcome. But if you went in and got, I don't know, a player, an attacker, a striker, or a winger who would offer better cover than a past it Raheem Sterling or a youngster, honestly, I think it wouldn't be a certainty, but I think you couldn't moan or complain as an Arsenal fan that you haven't gone for it. I think if this scenario continues and you stick with Sterling and the youngsters, and it doesn't go the way that you're looking for, I could understand why some Arsenal fans would be angry and point to that and say, look, this was the obvious time for us to go out there and show we want it, and go and get someone in to tip us over the edge. But if I'm honest, bro, I think looking at how you guys have been doing dealings, it's been really sensible for the most part. And that's what makes me think, looking at the deals you did at the end, he's not just going to suddenly go for it. But you know what? I hope he does, man. I want you guys to win it. So I hope he does, but I don't think he will, man. What do you think? Do you think you'll get extra cover?
I mean, this is two different questions, right? Should we and will we? I think in terms of will we, I think there is a slim possibility that we will, if the injury situation gets any worse and if we can't perform between now and January. And I think that's kind of what Arteta is riding on. He's hoping that we will be able to get through this period with basically a similar level of result, even if we had those players. And I think it has affected kind of our style of play so far for the season that we're looking at right now. But we've still managed to get good results. I think, for the most part, I mean, outside of maybe the Brighton game, I think we'd probably be happy with the overall result of the point tally that we've had so far. And as a result, I think that Arteta's kind of just got his fingers crossed in the back, just hoping that we can continue to get over the line with a lot of these key players out until they can get back. And then we can get back to being kind of full strength and him being a bit more confident in what we can do. But I think if we start to see that, there is a major gap between not having Odegaard, Martinelli and Saka available and their second choice players in those positions, and we're not able to get points, I do think he will act. I think at the end of the day, he's not stupid, but he's definitely opportunistic. And I think all the best managers will be, right? If they can get away with not buying in January, they will do that, right? Like I think most managers these days, particularly with the structure behind the clubs now and the directors of football and the head of recruitment and all these different jobs that kind of exist now within football, I think it's known that January is kind of a period of bad business, right? It's a period of business where it's a last resort if you've really had something catastrophic go wrong, or one of your new signings not work out, or whatever else it might be. It's a period for you to try and make up for it, right? But generally, the most organized and kind of well thought out and planned teams and squads don't tend to do a lot of business in January. And so that's kind of what worries me about Arteta. And I think I agree with you in the whole sensible argument, because we haven't really wanted to do too much business in January. the main thing I can think of is I think Trossard came in January, right? It was between him and Mudryk maybe, and that one just seemed more like an opportunistic, like, oh, he's available, he's unhappy at Brighton. We could do with having a kind of like a second choice player that will fill in the gaps here and there. But I don't think it's a great time to go out and buy people that are going to have to go and start in your team immediately. I don't think it tends to work out all that well. And I mean, City have done it a couple of times when they really desperately have needed to. And I think that's what will happen to us. Like, if we desperately need to, I don't think Edu or Arteta are just going to say, nope, we can't do any business. Let's just write off the season. I think they'll say, yeah, let's go out and get somebody, but let's be prepared that they're probably not going to be what we want. They're not going to be the best long-term play unless we get real lucky. And even if we do end up getting a long-term play, we're probably going to get ripped off, right? You know, unless they've had a falling out of their club or something. Again, it's really low probability type things that need to happen for this to work out well for us. So that's kind of the question of will we. Now, I think in terms of should we, I'm pretty much undecided at this point, because I agree with the whole idea of January not being a great time to buy players. I just don't think we're going to get the best quality of player that we need. If you think about like a left wing, right wing, or cam replacement, who on the market is really attractive that you really want to get, and that would be available for a somewhat reasonable fee? Because what I don't want to see, as much as I want trophies and silverware, and I think that Arteta does need to deliver something this year to really continue to bolster his reputation and to continue to create buy-in at Arsenal, I don't want to screw up our recruitment for the future. I don't want to go and overpay for somebody that we don't need. I don't want to go and overpay for somebody that isn't worth it, just to then be screwed over in the future when, you know, we don't have enough money to go and buy £100 million player when we need them, right? Whether it's we're looking at Isak next year or whoever it might be that we're looking at next year, we need to have the money. And so I don't want to go and spend 60, 70 million on some stupid purchase this year just so we can get basically inadequate cover for, you know, Martinelli, Saka or Odegaard. So that's the kind of part of me that says, no, don't do it. But at the same time, if there is a good deal on the market and Odegaard, Martinelli and Saka continue to kind of show maybe some doubts to their fitness, I think we should take the opportunity. And I think there is no better opportunity for us to win the league, as you said, than this year, right? And that's just from this period of the season, right? Like last year, the year before, there wasn't any major sign from City that they were going to be weaker, where losing Rodri and his whole like unbeaten record for them, that is a major kind of boon for us. So yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I really don't know where to sit in this, but it really is going to depend on whether Odegaard can come back and stay fit and perform well. Because I think everyone has forgotten that Odegaard used to be made out of glass. I don't know what changed, but he managed to kind of stay fit for the last couple of years, and he's looked good for us, and he's looked not like he hasn't looked like a liability in the injury department. But you never know, man. It can be one injury knocks off a whole family of injuries from the same area, the same muscle, the same whatever it is, over and over again from here. So I just really hope that the Arsenal physios and medical team can get him back to fitness and just make sure he doesn't. I hope Arteta also doesn't rush him back, because that could be a recipe for disaster. He gets another niggle. He keeps getting injured again and again. So I think we've got to trust Waneri and some of our other young players to do the job and let Odegaard really come back when he's at full fitness. But that's kind of where I sit on it. I'm not sure whether you agree or disagree with any of the points I made there.
Nah, I think you pretty much say the same things that I've said. I think the only difference is obviously, as an Arsenal fan, you've probably got an opinion on the business you did in the summer and whether you were happy with it going in, right? Some Arsenal fans weren't happy with it going in. So I think that will probably, a few injuries will probably just exacerbate that feeling, right? And make them feel even strongly about how they need to go and get some players to finish the job. But it seems like you're kind of still the jury out on what you make of the summer business and going in with like a reliance on the youngsters, and you've got to just wait.
Yeah, I mean, my view on the summer business was just that it was a bit of a down period. It was a down window, but I also know that in the history of teams, there's always typically some down windows, particularly with the new like FFP rules and all this kind of stuff. Like you can't just go out and spend every single year unless you start turning your academy into basically a money factory like City have done, and you manage to get people to just buy your bloody 12-year-old goalkeeper for 45 million or whatever. Like, we don't have that ability yet, right? Like, we're seeing bloody Cheeto Obi Martin just leave us and just say, you know what, I'm going Man United. I'm not helping you make no money. I don't give a crap about you. And we're struggling to make money off of a lot of our players. So until you've got that position, until you've built up your academy to become like this just well-known La Masia type kind of England kind of picture, it's really difficult to just maintain spending money over and over again every single year. And so I accept that. I accept that we're not going to just be able to go out and buy Declan Rice every year. We can't go and buy 70 million, 60 million pound Havertz, whatever it is. We just can't do those things. And I get that. So I see this being the down year, right? This is the down window where we've got to believe a little bit more in our youngsters and try and trim some of the fat so that we can go on and build when we've got, you know, better players on the market. Because I think that's one thing that was also down, right? Like, is we all talked about wanting strikers and wanting these different players. I'll be honest with you, this window was a bit of a stinker for who was available, right? Like, the main people that were moving places already, like, had decided to go a long time ago in terms of Mbappe and whatever else, right? Like, it just seemed like a bit of a stinker of a window in terms of like real good players moving and people being on the market. You know, Isak, Bruno G, all these people that we were talking about Newcastle having to sell, they didn't bloody sell any of them, right? Like, say, I'm okay if we're gonna have a down market or a down window, sorry, when good stuff ain't available, right? It's like go into a car boot sale with £100 in your pocket, but if everything's crap, I'd rather keep the £100 in my pocket for next Sunday. You know what I mean? So
you're being harsh though. I get it. I think you know what it is. This summer transfer window was like how people talked about the managerial window, right? When United we'll talk about it in the special segment later, but when we were discussing, you know, the Ten Hag future stuff in the summer, we were looking at the options being like, this is a bit underwhelming. But I think what's been proven by some of those managers making moves now and some of those players, right, less fashionable names, is people. It's like a changing of the guard, I think, in football this summer, and it was just like to a huge extent, both managerially and with players. Like a lot of household names have all kind of retired, fallen off the wagon or gone over the hill in terms of their quality. So there's like people are looking for those youngsters and those gems, like the Mintes or something for Newcastle, who, to be honest, if you'd have got him as a backup to Saka, that would have been sick. He looks class, right? But we didn't know him, and a lot of people, it seems like, didn't know him. So the market.
But I'm also talking about like replacing starting players in a in what is you're aiming to be a Premier League winning team. Like Declan Rice, a household name to come in and replace. I guess at the time, Saka or whoever you want to compare it to, right? Like that. I don't know how many of those were available this summer, right? Like Bruno G would have been one of them, I think. Isak would have been another one of them. I think Douglas Luiz going to like Juve was a weird one. Like that could have been another one of those like immediate replacements in a starting team type of vibe. But I just like a Minte, I agree with you. There were definitely like some hidden gems on the market that we could have gone out that would have added to the depth of our squad, sure. But I mean, in terms of what Arsenal fans were expecting, people was like saying we need a new striker. We need like a replacement for Gabby Jesus and or Havertz, however you want to consider it. And we want someone sick. Like we were looking at, I mean, think about it. Isak was like our first choice. And what's the Slovakian brother's name? Sesko, right? Like we were looking at Sesko as being like our second, third choice. Like we were not getting desperate, but like when we when we knew we weren't getting the players that we really wanted, like Sesko was like our third choice. And let's be honest, like he's still a pretty big name, and I mean he's like an FM kind of wonder kid type baller. So the point I'm making there is just like Arsenal fans weren't going to accept like a Minte signing, and I think even if we had got Minte, I don't think it would have materially changed anyone's viewpoint on this window. I think people would still be saying, yeah, maybe you've just swapped Fabio Vieira for a like like for like, basically replacement of another young up and comer. But where is the star that I need to lead the line for the team? Do you see
No,
what I
I hear
mean?
you. No, I do. I do. I'm not saying it like this is something the team should have done. I'm just saying that's the reality. The players
Yeah,
that I'm agreeing with you completely. There weren't the. There are some. I mean, just generally, I think in football there are less superstar names in general compared to years gone by, and that's what I mean.
yeah,
We're seeing like the changing of the guard. A lot of these players that were part of like a multi-dozen crop of like Ballon d'Or nomination type players are all retiring, going to Saudi, just literally just moving down the chain in terms of their club career. And
yeah,
so, yeah, you are shopping in, a smaller pool of the household names like the Declan Rices, which in a lot of cases are not available to other Prem teams. Like you mentioned, Douglas Luiz, you probably could have got him in terms of the fee, but Villa probably said, deuces, we're not selling to a Prem team, especially not another European team. So we're going to sell him off to Italy, and you're going to have to hold that. So the pool that you were shopping in was way smaller, and then, I mean, you see what a lot of other big teams did. They did go and get like, um, up and coming players, or players that they're having to take a bit of a punt on. You look at all of us; we all had to do that, and that's what I mean. I think this window was like the managerial one, where
yeah.
you're really just going to be fighting for
It was all
FM Wonder
risky.
Kids or scraps or whatever, And if you got lucky, maybe Newcastle would say, if you give us 150, we'll sell Isak, and you're like, but we can't do that. So, it's like golden handcuffs. You can't do anything about it. You're stuck. So. I think that's the
Yeah,
window, like the managerial one. That's what the reality, right? So I think, considering that,
100%.
I think we all should just be like, shouldn't maybe be so greedy and like spoiled about, oh, we want these superstar signings, because if Marino turns out to be anything like Calafiori, then I think you've done all right. But
Yeah,
it's just is what it is, man. I think all fans need to just tranquilo a little bit on the transfer window. Winning the transfer window is not the main
yeah.
thing. You got to win out on the pitch, haven't you?